The fire alarms went off at the exact moment the auctioneer raised the paddles. Champagne fizzed over the white tablecloths like foam on a shoreline. People laughed, then coughed, then realized it wasn't a joke. The scent wasn't smoke, it was the cheap, acrid burn of a fog machine tucked behind a palm wall where no fog machine was supposed to be. In the scramble, the paddles clattered. The violinist stopped mid-glissando, and a dozen glossy brochures skated across the parquet floor of the Lakeview Community Center like startled gulls. I kept my eyes on the woman in the cobalt dress at the end of row C, because chaos has a way of telling you exactly where to look if you've been paying attention long enough. Her name is irrelevant to this title, so let's call the role what it was. The PR director, not mine, our non-profits. She was a shining hire. Her references sparkled, and her portfolio could make a city councilman blush with civic pride. She claimed Milan by way of Bristol, summers in Sardinia, and a thesis on ethical persuasion she swore had gone viral on academic Twitter. In Milwaukee, where the lake air chews steel and kindness passes for currency, she arrived like a firecracker, popping with phrases we'd never used: brand pillars, donor journey, ladder of engagement. She said we were a story worth telling, then she taught us how to tell it. The first time I clocked a red flag, it looked like a bouquet. She sent lilies to the family of a construction worker who died on one of our affordable housing sites, a subcontractor named David Kriegel, 2 kids, a mortgage that ate half a paycheck, and a wife who wore her rings like armor. The card read, "On behalf of the Foundation for Lakeview Housing, we grieve with you and will carry your story in our work." It was a beautiful sentiment, except for the logo. The wrong shade of blue, a new hex code she'd defended in design review as more socially mobile. And the flowers were billed not to the General Memorial Fund, but to the Gala line item, coded Donor Cultivation. Her calendar, a quilt of meetings from 7:30 a.m. to past midnight, came to rest on a single star. Our annual Homes by the Lake Gala, June 22, 2024, Lakeview Community Center, 500 East Knapp Street, Milwaukee, 53202. Expected revenue, $142,000. Expenses, $46,850. Net target, $95,150. Scholarships for apprenticeships in carpentry, electrical, and HVAC. 20 new slots if we hit that number. I know the math because I was the treasurer and project manager rolled into one, a structural engineer who went soft for spreadsheets with souls. She made the gala sound like a coronation. "We're not begging," she said in a planning meeting, tapping the table with a fountain pen. "We're granting access to meaning." She replaced our homemade programs with a 48-page matte booklet that smelled faintly like glue and ambition. She booked a quartet from the Milwaukee Conservatory and a chef from a farm-to-table place in Bayview who could make radishes taste like confetti. And she convinced me, especially, that moving the silent auction online would triple participation. "People bid more on their phones," she said. "They feel like it isn't money." It was a joke, but not really. I didn't see the second red flag until later. A new Stripe account linked to a checking account at Harbor Federal Credit Union, ending in 0147. It appeared in our finance dashboard with the label Gala Experience Test, which is the kind of label busy people forget to relabel. I shot her a message. "Hey, what's 0147? She replied, immediately removing. "Was using a sandbox for the demo." "Sorry." And for a week it vanished. When the first sponsorship payment hit that test account in early May, $5,000 from Krebs Harlan Real Estate, she forwarded the receipt to me with a cheerful note about momentum. The PDF looked right. The line item in QuickBooks was in transit. The donor got a thank you call within the hour. Who checks the routing number on a tide that seems to be pulling you to shore? 2 weeks before the gala, she staged a run of show that felt like Tuesday Night Live. Speakers mic'd and blocked, lighting cues taped to the floor, caterers clocking how long it would take to pass 16 dozen goat cheese tartlets. She followed me room to room with a clipboard. "You'll deliver the impact numbers after the video," she said. "Not before. We prime emotion, then deliver facts to justify the feeling. Promise me you won't improvise." I promised. She smiled. "I love how you think in beams and spans. I'm trying to do that with people." I took it as a compliment. It was a confession. The morning of the gala, a Saturday, I signed for 6 deliveries. 24 potted hydrangeas, 4 cases of Cremant from a distributor in Madison, a crate of carpentry tools donated by a workshop in Racine for the auction, and 3 sleek black boxes labeled Stage FX Fog. I set the boxes aside. We didn't order fog. When the alarms shrieked mid-auction, the building's fire panel read, "Fault particulates." Facilities propped the doors open with folding chairs. We tried to hold the room by clapping our hands and flashing a smile I reserve for inspectors and storms. The PR director took the mic like a field surgeon. "Everyone, give yourselves a round of applause for making dreams breathable. We'll pause for 15 minutes. People laughed. Use this time to check the silent auction on your phones, she added. The sponsor A toolbelt item is climbing. In the noise, a volunteer named Issa murmured, "The anticoagulant, remember? The kid in training who cut his hand yesterday." We reassured her, "Not related. Not now." We pointed to the lake. We turned the room back into a room. At 8:37 p.m., under chandeliers she insisted we dim to taste, the live auction resumed. The big-ticket item, a weekend at a cabin in Door County, had paddles aloft at 1-800, 2000, 2300. The quartet nipped their crescendos like well-trained dogs. I checked the bidding platform on my phone. The account in the footer said, "Homes by the Lake Gala." The deposit info, a collapsible section no one but a treasurer would expand, showed Harbor Federal Credit Union. 0147. The air I had been pretending to breathe left me like a tide. "Can I talk to you?" I asked her at 8:51 p.m., low voice, calm face. She handed the mic to the auctioneer with a whisper. We walked to the corridor by the donor wall, a gallery of names etched into glass: teachers, plumbers, pharmacists, retirees, people who had pulled their own teeth in years past because money decided whether pain was a priority. She didn't look surprised. She looked tired. "We'll fix it Monday," she said. "The funds reconcile to the foundation. It's a pass-through." We needed a new account to avoid a 2-day hold for fraud triggers. The bank knows. It's normal. "Then show me the banking agreement," I said. "Right now." "Now?" She smiled like she'd spotted a stain on my shirt. "You want me to open my email during the biggest moment of the year? Trust me." "Trust me," I said. "We're going to my office. The breaking point isn't the moment you catch someone, it's the beat after, when you wait to see if they choose decency." She didn't. She chose theater. "Friends," she called, stepping back toward the mic. "Quick housekeeping." She gestured to the fog machine boxes. "Props," she said, and the room chuckled. "Also, please make sure your paddles are registered. Our treasurer is terrified of anonymous generosity." I have never loved a room of strangers more than I did when they turned to me, curious but kind, waiting to be told whether to panic. "We're good," I said into a handheld mic lifted from a stand, voice steady, spine electric. "Keep bidding, I'll handle the back end." The room exhaled. She held my gaze. The cards were face up. I didn't follow her after that, I followed numbers. At 9:12 p.m., while the auctioneer squeezed one more paddle out of a man in a navy blazer, I logged into our striped dashboard and pulled the destination account report. It was there, Act 9 ENSQ0147, beneficiary name Lakeview Experience LLC, EIN 8860734149, created March 4, 2024. I ran the EIN through the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions Registry. The LLC had a single manager. Articles of organization filed March 6th. Registered agent, Harbor Registered Services, 731N Jackson St., Suite 400, Milwaukee, WI 53202. Principal, Co 501, W Pleasant St., Apt 7C, Milwaukee, WI 53202. Her apartment. Receipts once invisible became braille under my fingers. A catering deposit of $6,500 refunded from our foundation card and rerouted from Lakeview Experience LLC to Chef on Kinnikinnick LLC, with the memo MOU Comp Exchange. A design invoice from Faro Studio for $3,680 paid from the Gala budget, with a website, Faro Studio. Site registered that same week, domain masked through a privacy service in Reykjavik. A $2,000 platform fee to a software vendor called BidBeacon Pro that didn't exist. The invoice number matched one generated by our real vendor the week before. The subtlety wasn't technical, it was tonal. Everything was spelled correctly and slightly too perfect. I took screenshots, exported CSVs, stapled names to numbers. I texted Issa to watch the back exit, not the front, because people who like an audience don't leave through kitchens. At 9:43 p.m., the PR director leaned into a hug from a donor by the lobby windows and slipped to the hallway. Issa called, "She's turning toward the service corridor." I followed at a walk, not a run. Panic blurs edges, walking keeps lines straight. In the service corridor, between rolling racks of silver chafers and a mop that smelled like lemon and resignation, she leaned against the wall and lit a cigarette. "Fire alarms, remember?" I said. She sucked the smoke like the room owed her air. "You've been wonderful," she said. "Truly, but you're making this smaller than it is. Enlighten me." "Grief," she said, and I watched her eyes soften into the face she showed to cameras and caskets. "Do you know what it costs to package grief ethically? To hold people's pain without letting it drown your mission? I do. I turned our organization from a plea into a thesis. That takes money up front. Money you didn't have. Money I created out of thin air by making people feel like heroes." "So you paid yourself a consulting fee," I said. "Through an LLC you didn't disclose, with donor money." I advanced costs, she said grim. And I took a 12% commission on sponsorship standard in Europe. You asked for Milan. You got Milan. We asked for decency. She flicked the cigarette into a mop bucket and tilted her head. Pull the tape, she said. You'll see I worked 16-hour days for 3 months. I saved you from your spreadsheets. Byron said, don't, I said. Byron was our executive director, the kind of person who apologizes to chairs when he bumps into them. Don't use him as cover. You wanted to win, she said, and you wanted to avoid being the bad guy. So I took that for you. I pushed, I carried, and if I paid myself, it's because no one else valued the thing that made the money flow. From the door I could hear the auctioneer puff into the mic, going once, going twice. Laughter, the room lived without us. That's the thing about organizations. They're boats, people are waves. You don't stop the lake by scolding the wind. I didn't threaten her. I didn't grandstand. I told her we would talk Monday, then went back to the control table and closed the auction at 10:03 p.m. with a net tally of 189,420 pledged, not counting paddle raises for the apprenticeship fund. I pressed the button to charge cards. The platform confirmed, settlements queued to Harbour Federal Aero 147. In 24 hours, the money would be gone into an account I couldn't reach. At 10:11 p.m., I sent a message to Harbour Federal's after-hours fraud line and left a calm voicemail. This is a non-profit treasurer calling regarding account ending 0147 receiving funds from our Gala tonight. We believe there is a misrouting and potential misappropriation. We request an immediate hold under Wisconsin Statute 112. 11 regarding fiduciary accounts and a temporary suspension of automated clearinghouse settlements pending documentation. I gave callback numbers, spelled names, and at 10:19 p.m. I emailed the same to Fraud Harbour Federal CU.com with PDFs attached, CCing our executive director and a lawyer who had once told me his favorite sound was the click of a statute fitting. At 10:32 p.m. I drafted a letter to donors. We are thrilled with the generosity tonight. You will receive receipts as normal. For transparency, we are conducting an immediate review of the settlement process due to a technical irregularity. Donations are secure. We will communicate Monday with details and options. Please do not dispute charges. Doing so delays resolution. I did not mention fog machines. I did not mention cigarettes. I attached a picture of apprentices in hard hats, laughing with sawdust in their hair, and scheduled the email for 7:30 a.m. Sunday rolled in with lake mist and a voicemail from Harbour's fraud manager, a man named Patrick with a voice like a plumb line. We have placed a temporary administrative hold pending verification, he said. Please deliver board minutes authorizing the account if it exists, contracts with the PR contractor, and any correspondence indicating her authority. By 11 a.m., I had scanned board minutes, no authorization, contracts, none her employment agreement forbade outside payment, and emails where she assured us the platform was synced to our foundation's account. I attached them with a subject line that used the word attestation twice because bankers love spells you can read in hearings. She called me at 12:36 p.m. You made me a thief, she said, the accusation so pure it turned the air brittle. Do you have any idea how many favors I called in? Do you know what happens to a woman in this industry who gets labeled difficult? You labeled yourself, I said. I'm labeling accounts. What if I prove costs, she said. What if I show you every euro? You didn't tell us about the euro, I said. You told us about the lake. She began showing up. Monday morning, outside our office at 711 East Lion Street, she leaned against a bike rack and pretended to talk to a journalist on her phone. Tuesday, she waited in the lobby with a pile of printouts and a tired smile for our receptionist. Wednesday, she was at my gym on North Prospect, sighing loudly between sets. I emailed our lawyer. Document, he said. Date, time, place, detail. Asked the building for security footage. Sent her a notice to cease contact outside counsel. I started a log, June 24th, 8:12 a.m. Lobby, June 25th, 6:03 p.m. Gym, June 26th, 1:17 p.m. Outside apartment 514 of my building, pretending to check mail while staring at my door. Cite Milwaukee Municipal Code 106-23 regarding disorderly conduct if necessary. Request temporary restraining order only if escalation includes threats. The log wasn't catharsis, it was a spine. Harbour Federal emailed Wednesday afternoon. Funds will remain frozen pending interpleader action unless parties agree to directed release. Please provide a notarized affidavit of donor intent and evidence that Lakeview Experience LLC is not an authorized agent of the foundation. We pulled invoices. We catalogued her personal email signatures. We found a Google Doc she'd shared without changing permissions. The file name was Gala FE Structure EU Model. It included a proposed 12% commission, pass-through expenses, and a contingency clause. If organization resists, shift settlement to Experience LLC to prevent kill switch. The document's footer showed last edited by her private Gmail. I took a screenshot. I didn't gloat, I emailed Harbour. By Friday, a police officer from District 1, named Sergeant Newman, called to say he'd received our report and would classify it as theft by Contractor Wisconsin Statute 779. 2-5, because she received money in trust to be paid to the foundation. Civil overlap, he warned. Expect a lot of paper. Paper arrived. On July 1st, her attorney sent a letter asserting she had an oral agreement with our executive director authorizing a commission structure typical in European markets. He attached a list of expenses: 3,780 design, 6,500 chef, MOU offset, 2,000 platform integration, 1,200 influencer stipend for posts that trended locally. He included screenshots of texts that read like compliments to a hurricane. You're saving us, you're a force, I don't know how you do it. There was no commission clause. There was the fog. We consulted a firm downtown Ida Marquez, 411 East Wisconsin Avenue, Suite 902, because their paralegal had once built houses in Finland and understood wood and words. They told us to move fast. On July 5th, we filed for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction in Milwaukee County Circuit Court to prevent disbursement of funds to Lakeview Experience LLC and require Harbour to interplead the money into the court registry. The judge, an efficient woman with the posture of a dancer, granted the TRO ex parte, set a hearing for July 12th, and admonished both parties that transparency serves the public interest. On July 6th, she knocked on my apartment door at 10:14 p.m. 3 knocks, patient. I didn't open. I typed into my log, noted. A minute later, my phone vibrated. I didn't look. The next morning, the texts read like arguments with headlights. You don't understand. You wanted this, I will explain. They'll turn on you. You know what grief tastes like now. Open the door next time and be human. I forwarded them to our lawyer and blocked her number. I did not change my route to work. I did not stop thinking about the man with the navy blazer who bid himself into a weekend he didn't need, and a life I hoped he'd discover. The positive turn didn't arrive with trumpets. It came as a Google Drive invite from a woman named Lynn Gauthier in Chicago who introduced herself as a forensic accountant via email with no adjectives. She said she'd seen our call for volunteers in a Facebook group for non-profit professionals and offered to audit our Gala finances pro bono. She had time between clients, a quiet apartment, and a cat named Fourier. I like patterns, she wrote. I called her the same afternoon. Her voice was the kind that doesn't require proof. She started with the BidBeacon Pro invoice. This font is wrong, she said. The Qs are curved differently from the real vendor's invoices. She showed me how to trace the image's metadata. The invoice had been exported from a trial copy of a PDF editor registered to Faro Studio. She found a second bank account linked to Lakeview Experience LLC, a savings account, at a bank in Bristol, GB. IBAN GB 556 Bark 2, 2015, opened on May 14, 2024. Some transfers of 500 each, Lynn said. Testing boundaries. She traced the chef's MOU comp exchange to an Instagram post where the chef thanked Lakeview Foundation for letting us shine, and a comment from the chef's sister. Did you get paid? The sister replied, we comped, silly. Community. Lynn smiled without making a sound. Narratives leave footprints, she said. July 12th, courtroom 317. The PR director arrived in a grey suit that fit like an apology. Her lawyer spoke first, painting her as a visionary punished for innovation. The funds were always intended for the foundation, he said. My client was ensuring liquidity and avoiding processing delays. The commission is standard in the European NGO sector. Our lawyer stayed seated. When it was our turn, he stood and said 3 sentences that were not poetry but felt like it. There is no contract. There is an undisclosed LLC. There is a bank account controlled solely by the PR director. Then he handed the judge our exhibits: the Harbour account info, the Bristol IBAN, the false invoice, the EU Commission memo. The judge turned her head slowly, as if looking at a horizon that wouldn't lie. Counsel, she said to the PR director's attorney, even if commissions are standard elsewhere, you are in Wisconsin. She granted the preliminary injunction, ordered Harbour to interplead $176,540 after platform fees and refunded costs, and set a schedule: discovery by August 15th, mediation by September 1st, status conference September 10th. That weekend, our apprentices attended a framing class and built a wall that stood straighter than my hands felt. Byron hugged me in the way people hug when exhausted. Softly, whole body, grateful. He didn't say sorry. He said, thank you for not setting the room on fire. I laughed, the kind of laugh that tastes like iron. She didn't stop. She emailed donors directly with a story about bureaucrats crushing good ideas. She posted on LinkedIn about toxic stewardship at legacy nonprofits. She launched a Substack called Ethical Thunder and subtweeted me as the treasurer who hates progress. I documented it all. I did not clap back. I added 3 paragraphs to our donor letter. One about how money moves legally, one about what it pays for, and one about how quiet work generates loud results. People responded with 20, 200, a check from a retired nurse who wrote, "You built my neighbor's ramp. That's all the contract I need." On August 3rd, Lynn emailed a spreadsheet with 24 tabs and a subject. I found the fulcrum. The fulcrum was a PayPal account linked to the Lakeview Experience LLC Gmail that connected to a Patreon, where she had collected $1,140 from 5 people at 38 month for behind the scenes of social impact. The rewards included process insights that quoted internal emails. One post included a screenshot of my impact slide with a watermark. "She's monetizing the inside," Lynn said. "That's a separate cause of action." We amended our complaint to add trade secret misappropriation under Wisconsin's Uniform Trade Secrets Act. Our lawyer didn't smile. He said, "We don't need to make this punitive. We need to make it stop." I agreed. We asked for injunctive relief and an accounting, not a public stoning. At mediation on August 28th, in a conference room with a bowl of mints and a view of a parking garage, the mediator asked both sides to state what they wanted. Her lawyer said 12% commission, reimbursement of expenses, mutual non-disparagement. Our lawyer said return of all funds, resignation with cause, mutual non-disparagement, and a letter to donors apologizing for the settlement irregularity. The mediator wore glasses with coral frames. "What does accountability look like to you personally?" she asked me. I said, "Clear money, clear words, clear doors." We settled on September 5th, 5 days before the status conference. Harbour released the funds to the court, which released them to our foundation. She agreed to pay $12,200 in liquidated damages for staff time, surrender claims to commission, and take down all content referencing our internal documents. In exchange, we agreed not to pursue criminal charges if she fulfilled the agreement within 30 days. Her lawyer added she would like to volunteer her services elsewhere. Our lawyer said that's between her and the next organization's treasurer. On September 7th, we issued a statement. Thanks to donor patience and due diligence, all Gala donations have been secured and applied to apprenticeships. We appreciate the lessons learned about transparency, and we have updated our policies. All platform accounts must be registered to the foundation. All vendors must be board approved, and all fog machines must be banned unless we're staging Macbeth. The apprentices started classes on September 9th, 2024, in a converted warehouse at 1320 W. Pierce Street, with saws that sang and mentors who smelled like cedar and coffee. The first stipend disbursed was $620 to a kid named Lucas, whose hands stopped shaking when he held a plane. He texted the program manager later, "I bought boots. I signed the new boots into existence with a click." The spreadsheet had a soul again. On September 10th, I opened my mailbox and found lilies. White, stiff, wrapped in cellophane that made them look like a guilt gift from a movie. There was no card. I carried them to the dumpster behind the building and hesitated. Grief hasn't done anything wrong, I thought. Grief only asks not to be used as a crowbar. I left the lilies on the picnic table behind the building with a handwritten note. Free to a good home. I watched from my window as a neighbor in a Packers hoodie picked them up and smiled like he'd found proof that the world still leaves offerings. Winter came early. The fog machine ban remained a joke in board minutes. We moved the next gala to a union hall where the ceilings are ugly and the floors are honest. We hired a new communications coordinator, a woman in her 50s who thinks power is making sure volunteers have rides. I kept my job and the habit of walking toward numbers like they were lights. I did see the PR director again. March 3rd, 2025, O'Hare Terminal 3, near a Hudson News where novels wait to be loved. She stood at a departure board in a blazer the color of spent sky, holding a carry-on like a brief apology. She scanned the flight codes with an intensity that made the letters look like water. I recognized the set of her shoulders and the crackle of a person rehearsing a story for gate agents and maybe herself. She looked beautiful. She looked alone. When the final boarding call echoed, I remembered the hook of that night. The alarms, the fake smoke, the way the room needed a steady voice, and how I had offered one. My phone buzzed. Lynn had sent a picture, apprentices laughing in front of a framed wall, Lucas beaming in new boots. I looked back at the departure board. The PR director turned her head like she'd heard my thoughts. She didn't see me. She squared her shoulders and walked toward gate H12, like the truth was on sale inside the plane. That night, after my flight landed and the lake spread out like a sheet that had been shaken and smoothed, I walked past the Lakeview Community Center. The evening staff had propped open a door for air. I could see the ballroom where once, exactly at 8:37 p.m., I learned that chaos will show you where to look if you keep your eyes on the person who believes they can make fog feel like weather. I stopped and listened. Violins drifted from a rehearsal, and I smiled. The place smelled like lemon and wood polish, and somewhere a kid in new boots must have been imagining walls that don't steal what they're meant to hold. And in the empty hall, with chandeliers dimmed to taste, an alarm stayed silent, as if it finally trusted us to know when to sound one.